Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 221 of CryptoBiography, and it is part 15 of Snake Magic. When we left off our story, Hefrid had essentially taken Neidre under her wing, so to speak, and that's pretty much where we left the story. They struck out from Hefrid's place after their nap. Hefrid took her to one of many small platforms scattered among the trees of the city. They were high up. She could see platforms and peg stairs on the trees around. The ground was not really visible, being blocked by branches, though here or there one of the ground-level buildings could be spotted. Hefrid watched Neidre looking all around. "Not afraid of heights?" Neidre shook her head. "No, though I don't know why not. I never had the chance to get up high. Well, except once when I climbed a tree to..." She trailed off. "Anyway, it was easy and felt very natural. My tail gripped the branches. It's the same here. I know there's small posts here and there near the edge. They'd be tripping hazards for humans, but for us it gives us a place for our tails to grip on." "Exactly right," Hefrid said. "Check this out." She made sure her tail was wrapped around a couple of the posts, then leaned her upper body out over the edge. Neidre found herself holding her breath, looking at her like that. Hefrid's upper body swayed, being supported only from below and behind by her tail. Only the great strength in her tail allowed her to hold herself out like that. But then, without really deciding to, she wrapped her tail around several posts and then leaned out herself. She expected to feel vulnerable, in danger, but she did not. A human would be falling to her death. But she was never, a human. Her tail was strong and sure and would not let her fall. She felt quite comfortable. Out as far as Hefrid, and they looked at each other. Hefrid smiled. "There is so much we can do," Hefrid said, "that humans can barely dream." Neidre looked down, allowing her upper body to sway a bit like Hefrid's was. It was comfortable, and the view was spectacular. "I'll bet you've been able to use this to get views of places the humans figured were out of sight," Neidre guessed. "Absolutely," Hefrid replied. "So, how do I learn the nasrach tongue?" she asked. "You're lucky, in one way at least," Hefrid said. "It's spoken everywhere here. Human is rare. So, you'll be immersed in it." "I only really started to learn human when I did a full week at a special camp, with everyone speaking only human. So, once you pick up the basics, you'll get to practice them all the time. And we should begin." And they did, right then, hanging out comfortably over the great heights at the top of the trees. Neidre, if she assumed there was something natural about nasrach that would allow her to pick it up quickly, was disappointed. She learned, but slowly and painfully. After a few basic lessons, they left their high platform and went to get an evening meal. Hefrid spoke to her in nasrach as much as she could, even swapping nasrach words mid-sentence whenever she could. And even if it was slower than she would like, Neidre started speaking back. To herself, she promised herself that the immersion would begin immediately, and she would use nasrach words and sentences anytime she knew them. Hefrid proved to be a patient teacher, giving her words again when Neidre couldn't remember them, and pronouncing more clearly when needed. As the days went on, Neidre found that she really was learning the language. It still felt like a foreign tongue, but she could hold a basic conversation easily. Hefrid started to return to her duties, though not going out in the field, as she considered herself still to be Neidre's mentor and guide, and was not training Neidre for such dangers. Most of the nasrach Neidre met were scouts under Hefrid. They tended to keep a distance from their leader's student, but Neidre didn't mind. About 3 weeks into this, Hefrid took Neidre to someone new. This nasrach was not a scout. "So who is she?" Neidre asked as they moved up another peg staircase. Her nasrach was good enough now that such a sentence came out almost without having to formulate it first. The one who taught me to speak human, Hefford responded. And Neidre was pleased that she understood her nasrach immediately. Why are we going to visit her? Because our time together is drawing to a close. Neidre stopped, and Hefford, sensing or hearing this, turned around and looked back at her. Do not fear, she said. I consider you a friend. I only mean that our time being together constantly is done. I must return to my duties. You have learned nasrach, and now it is time for you to learn other things about our society so you may find your place in it. Oh, Neidre said. Hefford hadn't said anything about this change in their situation before now. Perhaps she simply assumed Neidre would understand that their situation was not permanent. And she did, but she had not known that what the time frame was. Let's go meet your teacher, then. They continued for some time, Neidre enjoying the views of the trees and the various nasrach architecture, but also being distracted from them. She wondered what this new nasrach would be like, and if she teaches the human tongue, what did Neidre need to meet her for? She knew human. No one in Denazgar better. They ended up somewhere in the middle of Denazgar. Neidre did not know where. She was still accustoming herself to the three-dimensional nature of the city, and it took a while to orient herself when going somewhere new. This place was not high up, though it was not a ground structure either. It was a large but relatively plain platform with a good amount of cover. There seemed to be a number of standing desks and resting pegs around. There were a few nasrach there. One of them looked up when they mounted the platform and saw Hefford. Hefford, she called, and waved them over. They went up to her. She was older, with gray hair and a good amount of wrinkles. She wore a dress that told Neidre that she cared about her appearance, but was not wealthy or powerful, for though it was not expensively made, it was extremely neat and well cared for. It was in a shade of white that needs care to keep clean. Linsafed, this is Neidre, the one I'm teaching nasrach, she said, introducing them. Neidre, this is my teacher, Linsafed. Greetings, Linsafed said kindly. She gave a look to the others, who grouped up and left the platform. Did I interrupt a class? Neidre asked. Not at all, she said. Hefford, did you need anything else? No, Hefford said. Thank you for bringing her, Linsafed said. Hefford took this as a farewell. You're in good hands, she said to Neidre, and she left. It was one of the first times since she had entered Denazgar that she was not with her friend. She immediately felt uncomfortable. Hefford told me they freed you from the humans recently, Linsafed said. Yes, Neidre replied. And you were also freed? I understand you teach the human tongue. Yes, Linsafed said. It was a long time ago. 52 years ago. I was only 15. How did it happen? Neidre asked. Much like yours, as I understand it, Linsafed replied. The humans took me along on a trip out of the human city. Nasrach scouts spotted me among their number, and they effected a rescue one night. The humans had no chance to stop them. It was bloodless, for the Nasrach had been clever and used their magic. I was simply gone, and they couldn't even put up a chase. How long have you taught the human tongue? Almost since I was freed. I learned Nasrach quickly, and I started teaching a few words of human to my new Nasrach friends. Teaching came naturally, and there was a need, so I gladly filled it. That's good to hear, Neidre said. I hope something like that happens to me. I don't know what I'm going to do here. Yes, and I think that's why you've been sent to me. To assist you in teaching? Oh, probably, for a while. But more importantly, to try some things, see what makes you excited, and perhaps help you learn what it is to be nasrach. What do you mean? Linsafed smiled ruefully. Nasrach who are raised by humans get fed a lot of nonsense. it's difficult to separate that from the reality of being a nasrach or of nasrach culture. For a long time, I didn't feel like a nasrach at all. I felt like an imposter among them, like a human who had wriggled her legs into a snake's tail. And something like that happens almost every time a nasrach is freed. Really? Neidre said. Oh yes, she nodded, unless we free them very young. But that's rare, for the nasrach are raised deep in the human city and are closely watched. We don't usually get a chance until they're gifted or sold to a human master, who may be less careful in watching them. Neidre thought about this. I don't know if I feel like a nasrach yet, or maybe I do, or maybe I just don't know what that means. Well, it can be a process even to sort that out. But never fear. Whether you feel like a nasrach or not, you are one. And you're home. And that's the end of the story for this week. And it will continue. I'm enjoying writing it. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thank you for listening. Words and music copyright 2021 CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.